Meanwhile, as I already said, dear friends, European elites, globalists, they are terrorizing their own publics, isn't it? With this non-existent threat from Russia, while preparing for a war with Russia under this pretext, right? And allocating all sorts of assets for military purposes while not being challenged by nobody, because terrified public not going to challenge them, right? And we have this report now that I want to share with you, that according to Russian ambassador in Belgium, Denis Gonchar, NATO and EU are preparing for a big war with Russia. They justify these actions with the non-existent Kremlin plans to attack, intimidating their own population, ambassador said. And that's exactly what I'm saying for I don't know how long now, isn't it? If you ask me a couple of years ago, even maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, do I think European elites will dare to attack Russia to provoke actual direct or open war? I would say probably not. But now, by the way, when we have so many indicators that Western elites, European elites clearly are preparing for a war and are intensifying hostility towards Russia, today I would say that unfortunately, if Western societies would not wake up, if they can, and would not influence their own crazy elites, then in that case, war between Europe, number of European states at least, and Russia seems to be inevitable, because Western elites clearly are pushing for a war. And Russian ambassador in Belgium is saying the same, and he has much more information, obviously, than I do, because he has, due to his status, he has access to classified information that we never gonna know. So I think these statements of high-ranking officials do matter, by the way. They are issuing warnings, right? And first of all, I think this statement of Russian ambassador is directed not so much to Russian public, but to European public. To, and this is basically ask, wake up, people. What is wrong with you? Wake up before your freaking elites, your freaking governments gonna launch a war with Russia. When missiles start flying, it's just not too late then, there is very little can be done at that point. But can European societies wake up? I don't think so, unfortunately. I don't think they can wake up, man. We have to try, obviously, we have to try to wake them up, but will they? Are they capable, man? I don't think so. They've been brainwashed for so many freaking years that Russia hate is a natural stuff for many of them, right? Nowadays in Europe, you can say anything about Russians. You can write on whatever social platform or anywhere. You can say anywhere on a TV, by the way. You would like to exterminate all Russians, and well, you've been applauded probably, right? You will receive likes and well done, well said, and stuff like that. That's how indoctrinated in Russia hate Western societies have become, man. And on the topic of Western escalation, we have also another Russian high-ranking official, Grushko, by the way, deputy head of Russian foreign ministry, who said that EU is preparing for a military confrontation with Russia, which is true. So the European Union is preparing for direct military confrontation with Russia. This was stated by Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Alexander Grushko, and we have a quote from his statements. The main thrust of the NATO countries' military development policy and the European Union's subordinate policy is to prepare their economies, infrastructure, logistics, societies, and the military organizations for a direct armed conflict with Russia. The deputy minister said at the meeting of the State Duma Committee on International Affairs, expert council on the topic Russia-EU, the likelihood of a change in the political situation. According to high high-ranking diplomat, Russia's relations with European countries are currently in a profound crisis through their demonization of Russia. The idea that such a scenario of military conflict is inevitable is being installed in the public consciousness. If in the West, Grushko said, and well, he's correct. He's correct, by the way, and they would not pass without some official in Europe saying that, well, Russians are coming. Literally, there are no single day without some officials in the West threatening their own publics, their own societies with Russians. That Russians gonna come, and no one is challenging them. No one is asking, yes, but why? Why they are coming? Why? For what exactly? No one is asking questions, man. Especially not in MSM, at least. I know there is alternative media platforms, and they are asking the questions, but their influence is very limited to say the least, right? It is what it is, man. And yet again, I would beg, man, Western societies, if I had the opportunity to address all of them, man, I would, beg is a strong word, but to save the millions of lives, man. Okay, I can even beg Western societies to wake up, man, for their own sake, because we don't want war with them, right? But if it comes to war, well, we will decimate them, man. You understand what I mean? We don't want no war with Europe, man. But if it comes to it, well, if you think Ukrainian conflict is hell, then what Europeans gonna experience is gonna be like 1,000 times more in every possible way. And we don't want this to happen, man. I'm telling you, you're not gonna find anybody here in Russia that wants war with Europe. Actual war, man. We don't. But if it comes to it, then well, okay. We don't want to fight. We are ready to fight. We can fight, and we can die if necessary, man. We are ready for this. We are built this way, man. Right? Our mentality is this way, historically speaking. But we don't want no freaking war, man, with nobody. But if Western societies would not wake up to deter their own freaking elites, man, we're gonna end up in a war. And then gloves are off, right? Then enemy is enemy, man, and you have to make sure that you're gonna have a victory. And that means you're gonna do some stuff, man, right? War is hell, man. War is hell. But seems like Europeans forgot about it, man. Europeans just forgot about how devastating war actually is for everybody. Anyways, I mean, if I had opportunity, I would truly address, man, European people, and I would ask, man, please just analyze the information, learn a little more. Save yourselves, for God's sake, man, because your elite's gonna launch a war if you do not challenge them. And once missiles start flying, man, it's just too freaking late to do anything. And as I said, they are preparing, by the way. For example, Mark Rutte stated to terrify their own citizens in the West, that latest Russian missiles can reach every part of NATO territory. And you know what? As I said, these kind of statements now are being made exactly for that purpose, to terrify people in the West. Otherwise, what kind of statement is that? Russian missiles can reach any point on a NATO territory since the late 60s, man. Since 70s. What Rutte is talking about? What is he even talking about? And he went to say that we all are now frontliner countries and that kind of stuff. I can give you even a short video of his statement, by the way, right? A clear, pure demonstration of attempt to terrify their own people. Just listen to this, man.
Not be naive. We are all frontline states now. The latest Russian missiles can reach every part of NATO territory within a very limited time span. And what Iceland is doing in terms of indeed surveillance, air defense, etc., making sure that this country is hosting all the nations organizing this is crucial. But
You know, what can I say, man? There is not a single day in Europe, especially, when people not being terrified by these kind of statements. Russian missiles gonna reach any point. Russians are coming. Russians gonna do this. Russians gonna do that, and they being unchallenged by it. Why no one is asking Rutte, for God's sake, man? Russians have these kind of missiles like since late 60s. It was Soviet Union then, but nevertheless, right? And Soviet Union was no longer, well, Russia becomes successor, right? And Russia, from the very first day of independence from the Soviet Union, was in a position to strike any point anywhere on NATO territory and chose not to. But yet again, there is no true journalism in the West, brother. There is no true journalism in the West, unfortunately. And the only alternative media is in no position to compete with MSM and their propaganda that Western elites, globalists are pushing on the public non-stop. And for example, now we have this report also from Wall Street Journal. I did mention this topic like a week or two ago, and now Wall Street Journal is reporting on the matter that Germany developed the secret plan for a war with Russia. The plan depicts how 800,000 NATO troops would get to their eastern front line through Germany. And we have quotes here. We must relearn what we unlearned. We have to drag people back from the retirement to tell us how we did it back then. German Deputy Defense Minister stated while commenting on this matter. And clearly, by the way, I mean, they are preparing for a war, right? There is too many indicators of that. There are plans for Schengen, so-called Schengen, military Schengen, right? Which will allow European NATO member states to move around their equipment, manpower, without any barriers and any bureaucratic barriers, right? There is also, for example, this particular plan that Germany wants to implement, that it wants to turn itself into a main or major logistical hub for rapid deployment of some 800,000 troops towards the eastern front against Russia, basically, right? Towards the border of Russia. There are many other indicators, by the way, what is going on in the Baltics, by the way. Take a look. How much escalation is happening there from NATO side, right? So there are too many indicators that NATO is actually preparing for a war, but they are facing certain obstacles, right? All these remilitarization or industrialization programs that they launched a couple of years ago, first stages of it are going to be finalized by 2028, 2029, 2030. right? And therefore, calculus of the Western elites, globalists, as far as I can tell, is that they have to prolong proxy war against Russia by until that date, until 2029, 2030. And then globalists think they're going to be in a position to actually launch a direct war against Russia, open war against Russia, right? By NATO, European NATO member states. And to achieve this goal, to prolong this proxy war against Russia, you have seen perfectly well what they are doing. They are forcing the regime to sacrifice more and more people. They are testing ground a non-stop regime in Georgia to overthrow current government while using their assets there, so that then to use Georgia as a sort of second front. UK already did manage to destroy, basically, almost completely destroy relationships, political relationships between Moscow and Baku, or Russia and Azerbaijan. Escalation that we observe between two countries clearly was orchestrated by London, 100% by the way, and that means globalists are considering as a potential second front not just Georgia but Azerbaijan too. Both are southern republics, and they might drop into this chaos in this bloody escalation Armenia as well, because Armenia is controlled by Western elites, right? Also, take a look what is going on in Finland, in Baltic states, right? There are clearly indicators that globalists are considering to throw into war against Russia as a kind of second and third front, not just Southern Caucasus republics, for example, Georgia and Azerbaijan, but also even NATO member states. Finland, for example. They might well sacrifice Finland. They might well sacrifice Baltic Chihuahuas while preparing for a main assault on Russia by main NATO forces, right? And by main, I mean France, UK, Germany, Spain, and Western Europe, basically, right? Sweden, Norway, and so on. But it's not just that. London is actively testing ground to disrupt relationships between Russia and Kazakhstan. London is actively testing ground to disrupt relationships between Russia and Kazakhstan, and I'm quite sure globalists are working on the plans to provoke confrontation between Russia and Kazakhstan also. And I think Russian leadership understands this. I think China understands this, and Kazakhstan leadership understands this too. And hopefully there will be no tensions. But globalists are trying, globalists are trying to somehow prolong this proxy war against Russia until 2029, 2030, when they think they're going to be ready to directly openly enter this war against Russia. And well, on this topic of NATO aggression, we have also this report, by the way, that NATO states considering cyber offensive against Russia. Originally, this report is coming from Politico, so let me give you details on that. NATO's European members are reportedly considering joint offensive cyber operation against Russia. Politico reported on Tuesday, citing two senior EU government officials and 3 diplomats. Western governments are assessing cyber and other options in response to alleged hybrid attacks by Moscow, according to their publication. Latvian Foreign Minister Baiba Braze told Politico that NATO must be more proactive on the cyber offensive and better coordinate their intelligence services. And it's not taking that sender, it's not talking that sender in a signal, it's doing, she said. So basically, they are openly saying that, well, they are preparing for war, right? Cyber attack, in this particular article, topic of cyber attack being mentioned. And well, I last time mentioned this topic, massive Western cyber attack on Russia, when I was talking about next phase of escalation that NATO globally is going to launch against Russia, isn't it? And this next phase of escalation might happen literally at any time. Maybe globalists are hoping that they can prolong this proxy war without their direct open involvement until 2029, 2030, but they are also observing the developments on the ground, isn't it? And if so, they're probably realizing that Kiev regime not going to last until 2029, 2030. There is a high probability that Kiev regime's Kiev regime's armed forces will reach breaking point in next several months, and maybe even before end of this winter, upcoming winter, by the way, Kiev regime's forces will collapse towards their spring, for example. Maybe. And what global is going to do in that case? Once Kiev regime's forces are collapsed, obviously Russian militaries will conduct their auto offensive operations that everyone was talking about from the beginning. Where is the auto offensives? Where is the auto offensives? Well, everything has its own time, isn't it? After Plan A of special military operation failed, and Plan A was to quickly force Kiev regime to accept terms of the escalation, and that Plan A failed because of involvement of US and UK, collective West basically. And after Russian side realized that, well, unfortunately, quick resolution of this situation is not possible, then Russia implemented their attrition campaign, right? Attrition style warfare. And it's a slow process. Attrition takes time, but eventually side that wins attrition has their upper hand to launch our offensive at the point when opposite sides military capabilities or economical capabilities, political strength is collapsing, right? Our offensives are launched when, due to attrition campaign, hostile forces have cracked, collapsed. And this might happen, by the way, in next 3 to 5 months, possibly, maybe a little more, for sure in 2026, right? And globalists understand this. Globalists and their allies, by the way, neocons in the US and Zionists and whomever works with them, right? They all understand this. And therefore, they have no choice but to accelerate hostility against Russia and all the plans that they have in terms of open confrontation with the Russian Federation. First of all, European states, by European states, right? And how they going to attack Russia? How they going to enter this war openly? As I said many times before, while describing my understanding of the next phase of escalation, they're going to launch a decapitation strike on the Russian Federation. They're going to try to take out Russian political and military leadership for this, and simultaneously they're going to launch massive long-range strikes deep into Russian territory with all sorts of long-range weapons that they can come up with. And for these purposes, for example, they launch these all sorts of false flag operations all over the Europe on the topic of Russian drones, planes, and stuff to justify deployment of a significant number of their air forces to the Russian border. Formally, these planes, these air force assets were deployed toward the Russian border to deal with some drones and stuff, right? But in reality, European NATO member states are preparing this first wave of attack, right? They are preparing for first wave of attack on Russia, and they need a lot of planes to launch a lot of missiles, right? So that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna do a simultaneous attempt of decapitation strike on Russia, long-range, massive, unprecedented scale drone and missile strikes deep into Russian territory, simultaneous massive terrorist attacks inside the Russian Federation, while NATO countries and their secret services will use most of their assets, if not all, that they have in Russia to conduct large-scale terrorist attacks, to create chaos and panic whenever they can. And simultaneously, they're going to launch massive cyber attacks, also to create chaos. That's what their plans are, by the way, and they are not really good keeping these plans secret. That's what is going on. And dear friends, I don't know what can I do personally to wake up European societies, but if you can do something, do it, because we are due to this inadequate policies of their globalists and globalist control regimes all over the Europe. Due to inadequate policies of the Western elites, we are heading towards actual direct military confrontation, West versus Russia, and I don't want this to happen, man. Do you? And if there is any chance to wake up people in the West, in Europe especially, to deter their own crazy elites there in Germany, France, UK, man, do it, man. Do it until too late, because yet again, if globalists succeed, if Western elites succeed launching direct war against Russia, open direct war against Russia, whole hell gonna broke out, man. And trust me, Russian troops were already restrained in their operations against Ukrainian forces and against Kyiv regime, very restrained. And they're gonna be no restraints, none whatsoever, against NATO troops and NATO countries. If NATO will dare to attack Russia, if Western elites will dare to launch war against Russia, open war. So that's what it is, man. I think more talk is necessary about these risks, and I think it will be good if Russian, at least spokesperson of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Maria Zakharova, or maybe even Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, if they will devote some special conference to this matter, to these risks, to somehow try and reach out to European societies, right? Because yet again, if globalists, if European elites, if Western elites manage to provoke direct open war between Europe and Russia, between NATO and Russia, then, well, it's gonna be horrifying, man. If war would not go nuclear, we will decimate our enemies 100%, by the way. If if NATO, European NATO states, will launch war, open war against Russia, and if confrontation will not go nuclear, we will decimate, Russia will decimate European NATO member states in a conventional warfare with conventional means. But if confrontation goes nuclear, then whole world will be decimated. If war goes nuclear, if US is involved, and then all the other nuclear countries, then that's going to be extinction level event. That's how dangerous the situation is, man. It is what it is. And well, yeah, friends, a lot of news left, but let me end this news segment on this particular news, and the rest of the news will go in today's second news update on my Patreon and Boosty pages. Maybe some parts of it I will publish on YouTube and Rumble also. And therefore, one more reason, dear friends, why to subscribe to my Patreon and Boosty pages. I have you will support my work on one hand, and also quite often I have second updates or some other extra content on Patreon and Boosty pages of mine. So let me share with you this news, dear friends. Maria Zakharova, official representative of the Russian Foreign Ministry, responded to yet another irresponsible statements of top EU diplomat Kaya Kallas, who stated that in past 100 years, Russia attacked some 19 countries, some of them several times, while none of them attacked Russia, which is, I mean, quite something to say, but but because there is no true journalism in the West no more in MSM, right? And because public mostly have been indoctrinated in total Russia hate. By the way, no one is challenging these crazy statements, these crazy persons that are in charge there in the West, in Europe, in this particular case, which is sad, man. But of course, we are watching, we are monitoring the situation, and when necessary, reacting. And let me give you what Maria Zakharova commented. So Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova commented on EU number one diplomat Kaya Kallas' statement about Russia's attacks, declaring that after such statements, the paramedics needs to be called psychiatrists. I will say. Kallas stated that over the past 100 years, Russia has attacked more than 19 countries, some of them 3 or 4 times. However, she added, none of these countries have attacked Russia. In response to this statement, Zakharova wrote on her Telegram channel, "Call the paramedics. I now understand why journalists at their briefing today asked me to comment on U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's refusal to meet with her. It's not safe," Zakharova said, while hinting, I guess, that Kaya Kallas is infected with rabies because she's acting like a rabbit creature, right? And let's see this short let's see this short video where Kallas is talking about this nonsense that no one attacked Russia in past 100 years.
Russia has attacked more than 19 countries, and some as many as 3 or 4 times. None of these countries has ever attacked Russia. So in any peace agreement, we have to put the focus on how to get concessions from Russian side.
Dear friends, do I have to comment on this nonsense that Kaya Kallas come up with? It is sad, though. It is sad that this kind of totally irresponsible statements have not been challenged in Europe, man. Level of decline, as yet again, level of decline of societies, of journalism, of political class is beyond any imaginary boundaries, man. In the West, especially in Europe, as you can see. This is crazy, man. This is crazy. And the only response on this kind of attacks on Russia by their Western so-called elites is as Maria Zakharova commented, right, with irony and their dark humor, sort. Because you cannot comment this kind of stuff seriously, man. It's just insult to the intellect of the world community, right? What Kaya Kallas is saying there, and what many other Western so-called elites are saying on daily basis, right? But Maria Zakharova was, she did good, man. She did responded in a quite strong way that she now understands why Marco Rubio refused to have a meeting with her. It's not safe, and yes, it is not, man.